Welcome into Chicago Bears Now. I am your host, Harrison Graham. Minicamp wrapped up today, so we'll have some notes from that and, of course, hand out some winners and losers from this week's practices now that mandatory minicamp is in the books. Things wrapped up earlier today. A bit of a shortened practice on Thursday. They got after it in the morning. Lighter practice, did some red zone work, and then wrapped it up. Matt Eberflus, a couple of other players, including Braxton Jones, talked. We'll talk about him here in a little bit. Team is now off for 5 weeks or so. Obviously, guys will be working out, or they should be, as they need to come into training camp into shape, and that is something Matt Eberflus said. Get your running shoes on because we're hitting the ground running once training camp gets going. So a little bit of vacation before the 2022 season ramps up, but we're not going anywhere. Daily videos, I promise you that. Let's be honest, though. These next 5-6 weeks, things slowed down a little bit. You know, I'm digging deep for content, and we'll be able to do that for you guys. But I'm ready for training camp. I don't know about you guys, because you hit training camp, then kind of the gaps until week one, they kind of crunch down pretty quickly there. Like this video if you're ready for training camp to be here, because once it is, there's stuff to talk about every day. The preseason gets here, and then week one's here before you know it. So hit that thumbs up icon if you are ready for Bears training camp to finally get here. All right, let's get to some winners and losers from this week's practices. How about Braxton Jones, man? Listen, we considered him a winner last week at OTAs, getting some first-team reps at left tackle, and that was the case this week. He got all the first-team reps starting at left tackle. I think he's got a real shot to start at that position unless the Bears go out and sign somebody. They've moved Larry Borom over to right tackle to play with the starters. He's been working exclusively over there the last several practices. I think we can only go by what we know, and what we know is Braxton Jones is getting those reps. And the way you could look at this, in a couple of different ways. I want to spend a moment on this. Number one, Braxton Jones is either really impressing this coaching staff, and he even flat out said earlier today that I was a little bit surprised that I got first team reps this soon, but then he said that faded quick and it just became all business, all football. So that could be number one. He's really impressing. He's taken off. Number two, the Bears may not feel great about their options over there. They moved Devin Jenkins to right tackle earlier in the offseason, pretty much right away with this new regime. Borom's now been working more at right tackle than left tackle. I mean, are you going to put Julian Davenport out there? I don't think so. So kind of, a two-headed type of thing there. Glass half full, Braxton Jones might be a pretty good player. Half empty, you don't have a real left tackle, and that could be a problem. But we got to consider Jones a winner. I liked how he sounded at his press conference today, said some good things. So we'll see when the pads go on in training camp. All right, let's get to our next winner, another rookie, Jaquan Brisker, who things have kind of been quiet around him during OTAs and camp, but I would say in his case in a good way, because there hasn't been any of this Jaquan Brisker, he's not, he hasn't been lined up in the right spots, this and that. It's mostly just been like, oh, yeah, he's been out there doing his thing. And Adam Johns reported on the Hogan John podcast and for The Athletic that Jaquan Brisker stood out in every practice that he's attended. I think that's a good sign. When they made that pick, I really liked it because I think he's a huge upgrade at strong safety. He's going to help Eddie Jackson get back to hopefully the level of play that we've seen in the past. I think Brisker's got a real shot to really stand out during his rookie season. Now, we just talked about a pair of rooks in Braxton Jones and Jaquan Brisker. Who's going to be the Bears' best rookie this year? Not throughout their career. I'm talking about this season in 2022. You got Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker, Velus Jones, Braxton Jones, some other rookie offensive linemen, Dominic Robinson perhaps. Who's it going to be? I think Brisker's got a real chance of being that guy. Next up is Dante Pettis, who we really hadn't heard much about at all since they signed him about, I guess, a month ago now. Didn't hear his name, honestly, once during OTAs, but really had a nice week, at least on Wednesday. He had a long touchdown catch of about 40 or 50 yards from Justin Fields, caught a deep crosser and kind of turned the edge and was able to score there. That was good to see. And, that was the type of play he was making at Washington when he came out. And even in his first season for the 49ers, he's got the yard after the catch abilities and downfield upside, but he just hasn't been consistent in the NFL. And he's, plays like that are going to give him a real chance to make this roster because it's going to be competitive. We talk about how this wide receiver group isn't by any means one of the better ones in the NFL, But there is some competition, right? I mean, after your top 3 there, I think St. Brown is safe as wide receiver 4 probably. But after that, Daz Newsome, David Moore, Tajay Sharp, Dante Pettis, Isaiah Coulter. I mean, these guys should have opportunities to make plays, and Pettis is a guy who stood out a little bit this week. One more winner to get to, and then we'll get to some losers from minicamp this week. But first, please follow us, subscribe on the Call-In app, because I'm going live over there every single week after our YouTube live shows on Tuesday, usually around 4 o'clock Central Time. It's like Twitter Spaces, if you've ever checked that out. It's kind of I would call it an audio social podcasting app where there's a caller queue. You can hop in there. I pod you on sports radio style if you guys ever listen to sports radio, and call into your favorite host, in this case me, and you ask your questions, I have answers, and we go back and forth. It's not just I answer your question, you can rebuttal after that. Like on YouTube when you send in your questions, it's not like it's a back and forth conversation. On Call-In, it can be. Your chance to call in and talk to me directly via your words, and it's a lot of fun. There's also a live chat feature. We post them later as VOD, or I guess audio on demand podcasts. Chatsports.com/BearsCallin. Go subscribe. You can also download the app on iOS or Android. Just search Call-In, or the link in the description comments of this video. Okay, next up, Matt Eberflus, the head coach. I've been pretty impressed with just how even-keeled, level-headed, and articulate when he talks at his press conferences that he's been. He's installing his culture. I think that much is clear. And you know how I know that? Because they were too physical to the point at OTAs that they lost a practice. And I didn't have a problem with it because he's installing his physicality culture. I have no issue with that. Accountability, that's something Travis Gibson talked about. Like, hey, like with this new staff, we got to be accountable. And I think he's done some cool things too. Like today, all the Bears players were number 41 in honor of Brian Piccolo, who passed away several years ago on this day. I think that was a cool touch, a guy who lost his life way too soon, but was a great Chicago Bear. He's brought in, all-time greats. Rod Marinelli, a former Bears assistant coach, was there at practice this week talking to the guys. Guys like Charles Tillman have been in the building. He's been in contact with Brian Urlacher. So he understands the history of the franchise, and he's teaching these guys like, hey, you have the chance to be like these guys were, but you got to live up to that standard. He's preaching that culture, and he's also saying, hey, you got to hold yourself accountable. I think those are all good things to install in your first off season as a head coach. Are you happy with Matt Eberflus so far? Type Y for yes, type in for no. Nothing he's done would suggest any reason that we shouldn't be, right? Now, obviously, if the Bears start 0-8 or something like that, we can think differently. But considering there haven't been games yet, I think overall, so far, so good. Let's see how training camp goes and go from there. All right, let's get to some losers from minicamp. Dakota Goedert, because, listen, he got carted off, right? Had it seems, some level of chance to be a starter at right guard. Gets carted off from practice on Tuesday. Still unclear how severe that injury is, but anytime you get carted off, at minimum, it's going to be some kind of severe sprain, if not worse. So, hopefully we get some more information. I would guess we'll know by training camp, right? If he's out there, that means it wasn't as serious as we thought. If he's not, probably means he's going to miss a significant amount of time. Hopefully it's not one of these season-ending injuries. I wasn't high on the idea of him potentially starting anyway, but you don't want your depth being hurt even if he's a backup type. So, tough break for him. He's got to be considered on the losers list because for him, obviously a lost opportunity. Subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, daily Bears videos, regardless of the time of the year. We're kind of entering a dead period, but there's still stuff happening. Maybe another wave of free agency hits. We'll have some other segments for you guys as well. Get you ready for training camp over the next few weeks, and our live shows will remain on Tuesdays, 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 Central Time. Subscribe. This is really the time to get in, get used to this channel, and then, we ramp up even more once camp, preseason, and the regular season gets here. Hit that sub button. Let's get to 50,000 subs before training camp. All right, Devin Jenkins, listen, took second team reps all week again. I don't know if the Bears are sending him a message. I don't know if he's not performing up to the standard of what they expect. He's a backup at the moment. So, that's not ideal, right? At least for him. Listen, if there's 5 guys better, cool. That's a good thing. But I'm kind of taking this as Devin Jenkins is not showing them what they want to see, which is why I had to make the depth chart change. You got Braxton Jones at left tackle, Borom at right tackle, Mustafa at right guard, Patrick at center. I think left guard and center are still the only for sure staples on this offensive line, and Whitehair and Patrick. Those other three positions still very much up for grabs, but right now, Devin Jenkins on the outside looking in when it comes to having a chance to start. And, for him, I think it's a big 5 weeks coming up. Get into the best shape of your life, get ready for training camp, and hit the ground running because the competition is only going to ramp up from here. What do you guys think Jenkins' role will be come week 1? Think he's going to be a starter? Think he'll be a backup? And now the curveball in all this is maybe he kicks inside and starts at right guard. That could be a possibility. Type S for starter, type B for backup. I don't know, man. It's, right now, if they played a game today, I don't think he would start. So at the moment, I'm typing B for backup. All right, finally, Robert Quinn. And again, not because he's not performing well or whatever. It's because he's absent, and, it's an unexcused absence. And I don't think it's necessarily a huge deal, but he remains away from the team. And I think if nothing else, it creates more, people like me and, people who cover the team on, for other outlets of, they're going to speculate a little bit, right? Is he going to get traded? Does he want out? Do the Bears want him out? Do they want him in? Unless that gets cleared up, you're going to hear more from people like me kind of throwing out those ideas. So we'll see what happens over the next 5 or 6 weeks. We'll see if he reports to training camp. I'll tell you one thing. If he does want out, if he wants to get traded, don't show up to training camp. I think that would send a very strong message to the team like, hey, I think it's best for both sides if I get traded. So I think day one of camp, we'll have a damn good idea of what's going on with Robert Quinn. The good news with him being gone and Al-Quadin Muhammad not practicing yet, he's nursing a little bit of an injury, it sounds like. Travis Gibson, who had a good year last year and I think is going to have an even bigger year this year, and rookie Dominic Robinson have gotten good reps. Gibson came out yesterday and said that, hey, Robinson is further along than I was as a rookie. That's a good sign. He's got the athletic traits to be a good pass rusher. Gibson, it seems like he's kind of taken more of a vocal role on this football team as he enters year 3. I like that as well. So Quinn being out may not be a huge deal. Maybe it's a net positive to get some of these other guys some opportunities. All right, there you go. Some minicamp winners and losers as we now wait for the next 4, 5, 6 weeks until training camp gets here. But we're not going anywhere. Other channels might take a month off. We're not going to do that, though. We'll still continue to bring you daily videos on the Chicago Bears. So go ahead and subscribe. Help us out. It's free. YouTube.com/BearsNow. I'm your host, Harrison Graham. We'll see you soon here on the channel.